All right, so chotomate. Okay, so we have talked about the Lazada retrenchments, all right, and some light in the at the end of the tunnel. Now we are going to be looking at Bristol Bay. So, what was the thing that compelled me to talk about Bristol Bay today? Simply put, this happened yesterday, or at least as of filming this particular video. The EPA, all right, the Environmental Protection Agency in USA, it said that it has blocked. Sorry, no, this occurred last year. The Supreme Court yesterday, it denied Alaska's bid to revive the copper and gold Pebble Mine proposal. So, for some context here, all right, what is this proposal? The proposal was to build a mine, all right, called Pebble Mine, and they will mine for copper and gold at this particular location here, called Bristol Bay. All right, it's in Alaska. All right, and it's simply put one of, if not the largest, wild salmon fishery in the world. All right, and yeah, so just for some understanding, the Supreme Court in most democratic countries is the highest appellate court. That means if you want to appeal any court decisions, it goes and it's of enough significance, it goes to the Supreme Court. All right. The Supreme Court doesn't oversee any cases. That would be the lower courts. They would do that. Then the appeals go up to the Supreme Court. So last year, almost to the day, in fact, the EPA blocked the proposal, all right, to build this Pebble Mine. And they went through a year-long process of appealing, and the Supreme Court said, yeah, computer says no, right? Computer says no, it's not gonna happen, So why is this so particularly significant? This is a topic that, from a practical view, is good for environment essay questions in GP, all right? And yeah, but first we need to understand what Bristol Bay is. So as I said just now, it's one of, if not the largest, wild salmon fishery. That means, right, it is one of the last bastions or last sanctuaries whereby wild salmon at that, will go upstream, lay their eggs, and then afterwards, respawn and help maintain the overall ecosystem. So a fishery, in short, in case you don't know what that term means, it just means people who fish for a living, right? And that area is called a fishery. So Bristol Bay is where is it? Right here, right? As you can see. So Alaska here, okay? And yeah. So the thing is that why Bristol Bay is so important, or rather, why is it so unique aside from everything that I just said? The thing is that Bristol Bay in itself, right, is a fishery, or its fishing industry, right? It's worth, as you can see here, roughly about 2 billion every year. Okay. In the grand scheme of things, it might seem like it's not a lot. It actually is, but sure. But what's really so unique about that? The unique point about Bristol Bay is that it is a sustainable fishery. What does that mean? So the thing is that in the past, right, obviously nowadays, that's not really too much the case. How people fished in the past, and we are talking about the 20th century, was that, or even before that, all right, was that they would fish to the maximum point. All right. This concept is called maximum sustained yield or maximum sustainable yield. Right. As you can see in this curve here, the idea is that this particular, oh, come on. Right, here we go. Yeah. So this particular curve here, as you can see, right, is at this juncture, okay, is basically the point whereby you can maximize the amount that you fish while making sure the population can still, the population, by population, I mean the population of the fish, can still sustain itself, right? Can still reproduce. In the past, we always sought to hit this. The problem comes when everybody is doing it. So what happens then is that, fish stocks will start to collapse, all right? So the most infamous case study obviously will be the North Atlantic cod, this one right here. Its population collapsed, in the early 90s because it was just overfished, as you can see here, all right? The thing about Bristol Bay is that, number one, they keep it sustainable. They fish way below that maximum sustainable yield, all right? So maybe about here, Number two, it is also home to many indigenous nations, I guess, or indigenous communities in USA. And the way they fish is not only meant for economic purposes, but it is also a part of their culture. All right. So what you have at Bristol Bay, in short, is this overlap of a sustainable fishery that's providing economic benefits to the communities there. It is being sustainably fished in a way that helps enhance the cultural identities of the indigenous communities there. And obviously, in preserving the pristine environment here, all right, just to give you a sense of how it generally looks like. I mean, look at that. It's absolutely beautiful, especially when the sockeye salmon goes upstream, There are many, many videos that show that. Like this one right here, as you can see, it's absolutely amazing. It's just exquisite, right? And yeah, in keeping its environment pristine, it also helps maintain the surrounding ecosystems. Now, what then is the problem with Pebble Mine? Pebble Mine sought, or at least the proposal here is to build this not pebble, copper and gold mine, right, in this area. Their proposal, which is, I mean, like, at least officially what they state is that they can do it in such a way that it wouldn't disrupt the fishing industry at Bristol Bay. But obviously the environmental impacts will be massive, right? And usually that spills out, or that spills over into a whole lot of other things. Because the thing is that, okay, I don't know the technical details, but the idea is to build that sort of copper and gold mine there. It requires a lot of effort for quite little returns, which also means the operations necessarily need to be massive, right? And as you can see here, if built, Pebble Mine would be the largest mine in North America, all right? And I guess the waste that would be produced through all these mining operations would also consequently damage the surrounding environments, all right? So in blocking this particular revived bid, to sort of like overturn the EPA's ruling last year. The US government is, or at least the Supreme Court, all right, is essentially saying, yeah, no, we are not going to allow you to do this, which would be, which would represent a very, very huge victory for the Bristol Bay community, because they have been fighting this case for decades at this point, right? Ever since the proposal was first introduced, I think in the early noughties or something like that, or the 20 teens, I'm not very sure. So what then, I guess, is the significant thing here? I mean, aside from the fact that it will be great for the Bristol Bay community, right? The most significant impact, I guess, would be the protection of the environment itself, because obviously, one of the world's largest, wild salmon fishery, right, being protected and allowed to continue in their ways and to do it sustainably. And they, by the way, are one of the world's largest supplier of wild salmon, right, to the rest of the global economy. So yeah, that's one, all right. But I guess, there's not a lot to break down here as much as the case of the retrenchment, because there's a lot of granular detail that needed to be fleshed out to understand the whole trade union system here in Singapore. But for this Bristol Bay thing, all right, how then do we use it in our general paper essays, or just any sort of argumentative essay as a whole, right? Very simple. Okay, again, we can look at it from number one, obviously the environmental perspective. This is a great sort of example, I guess, to demonstrate the importance of keeping certain environments pristine, or whatever environment that we have left pristine as much as possible. All right. And of course, it is also a great example to use to flesh out the impacts of, let's say, exploiting natural resources. All right. Because yes, we exploit natural resources, but there is a way to do it sustainably, like what the fishery is doing over there, versus the potential environmental damages that can occur after the establishment, if the mine was to be established, right? Number two, it also brings into question, or at least analysis, the importance of governmental protections, in sort of regulating the exploitation of natural resources and the natural environments. Because as I said earlier, in the other video on the retrenchments part, firms would maximize profits, or at least they always seek to do that. How they go about doing it, obviously, is dependent on each company's philosophy. So, for instance, a company can seek to maximize profits, but they can do it in an environmentally responsible way. Or they can just, take the IDGAF sort of attitude and just exploit as much as possible and reap as much profits as possible, or sometimes even go as far as, in a way, whitewashing their own actions, or to even spread certain misinformation to sort of undermine, the public discourse, like what the big oil companies did, in the 70s. And that in turn influenced very much the the climate hoax sort of community, let's not get further into that. But essentially people who are skeptical of the notion of anthropogenic climate change, i.e., climate change that's influenced by human activities. All right. Of course, there are many companies who do that. And in this case, what you see here is a direct contrast of both, the fishery versus the Pebble Mine itself. And I can't remember the name of the company that sought to establish that, but whatever they tried to do to essentially, try and mine gold, copper, and pretty much at the expense of the natural environment. And of course, another perspective that you can take here would be, I guess, a more sort of activist kind of perspective, because much of the resistance to the establishment of the Pebble Mine came in the form of the community banding together and protesting this and bringing this to the attention of the US government. And obviously, they would also have had support from NGOs like WWF or just anybody who may support their cause, right? And who knows about it in the world as a whole. So in which case, all right, this would serve as a great example to really understand the importance of keeping the environment pristine, while also, I guess, serving as an example of a way that mankind can chart our way forward, in terms of how we can adapt, like the way that we live, and our relationship with the surrounding environment and how we exploit natural resources. I mean, obviously, the answer isn't all that simple, right? There will be a lot of resistance from multiple stakeholders, and that's just sugarcoating it. And obviously, it's on a case-by-case basis, right? Because for many other industries, it cannot simply be a case of, hey, let's measure, how many salmon swam upstream this year, and then we fish according to that number, right? It's not as simple as that in many other cases. And even then, in the case of the salmon industry in Bristol Bay, it wasn't all that simple as well. And it required a very, very strong, I guess, a cultural element to it as well, because the fishing industry there and whoever that participates in that industry, they inherently understand, right? So what we are talking about here is essentially an unwritten social contract, how they should, manage their relationship with all these natural environments. So, that's how we can use this particular example, particularly in essays related to the environment. So that's pretty much it for today's episode. Hope all these breakdowns were helpful, right? And all these reading resources that you can look at here to go and find out more context about certain things, related to these two case studies. And obviously, right, if you are unsure about something, that was mentioned in this video, or any sort of current affairs, or just general paper as a whole, or let's say not even general paper, let's say related to H2 history or English, right? Please feel free to submit a question here using this particular link, and then we'll address it at the next episode. And of course, if you are looking for more, I guess, a longer term help, right, and longer term, supplements to your academic journey, plug here, right? You please feel free to call us or WhatsApp us for a free trial for either general paper, H2 history, or English lessons. And we can see how we can help you, help you target your weaknesses and get you ready for your national exams. And yeah, so yeah, that's it for this video. And whoever that's watching this, thank you for watching, right? Be it, local students or just anybody from any part of the world. And if you'd like to voice your opinion, even on any of these topics here or our previous episodes as well, I would like to hear from you, because obviously when I can listen to different opinions, that I can learn from that as well, right? And that would in turn help me better teach my students. So yeah, have a great day and see you next time.